Hello to this new video. In today's video, I want to show you how you create a special Deforum video. Most of you who know Deforum might know. I have an example on the right. This typical video where you see a normal video at the beginning and then there is a break, a split, and from there on you see the Deforum craziness happening and you're diving into some underwater scene like in the example on the right side. Most people only know how to do this in Automatic 11.11, but in ComfyUI this is possible as well. You have almost the same settings like in Automatic 11.11. This is really all about the settings. The node setup is quite straightforward. The workflow is based on the workflows we created in the last Deforum videos. There's only slight changes. You have to connect an image with your Deforum iterator node. So Deforum has an idea where to start the animation, and for sure you have to change and schedule the prompt, and you need to animate lots of settings, lots of the Deforum settings, especially the translate parameters. I will show you how you do that. I will put all the animation settings in the description below, as well as the checkpoint and the links to the former Deforum videos I did. It's really a basic ComfyUI Deforum workflow. We just need the image input. You can see here there is this handy load video node which Deforum offers, and we can simply change the start frame value to pick the frame we want, and then we can fill this into the iterator node and then go from there. I will start with the workflow from the last Deforum video, the cadence interpolation video, and then I will show you all the settings and all you need to know. The video I used here will also be linked in the description below. I downloaded it from archive.org. I found this scene quite fitting. This guy jumping from the stone into the ocean, and then Deforum happens. So you can use this as well. So let's start from the standard basic workflow. Here we have the cadence workflow. You don't need a cadence interpolation workflow. You simply need a basic ComfyUI Deforum workflow, and all I show you should work with this workflow. So yeah, let's start by loading the frame where we want to start. If you have a video you want to switch to Deforum at a certain frame, Deforum has a quite handy node for that. It's called Deforum load video. Double click on the background, and there we have the Deforum load video node. You can click on choose video to upload and choose your video. I loaded the video. I wanted to preview the video with the normal preview image node. This only shows a preview image when you generate something. We have to deactivate the iterative feature. This means Deforum will only load this one frame and it will not count up. You can also use this node to make a video to video with Deforum with this node, but for this example we don't want the iterative feature, so we set the start frame to 1750, and this will give us our frame where Deforum generation should start. We need to encode this frame so that the latent input here in the iterator node can handle it, and we need to connect this with our model. So as a model I choose the ref animated model. I find this is working quite well. The latest version is version 2 Rebirth, but I'm using the older version 1.2.2. Then we can connect this to the init latent. there is a special port. This is only for the first frame. Let's start a generation only to get our preview image. For this, I reset the counter and reset the latent in the Deforum iterator node. This has to be done every time you want to start a new generation, a new video, and then you can click on your start button. And there we have our preview image. Okay, so now that we have our starting image for Deforum, we can do the settings. One thing I also want to show you is, depending on what source video you use, you might want to upscale or downscale the image you use as a start image. So let's quickly load a simple upscale image node without any model. This we use to this can be used also to make the image smaller. For example, now the image is 1280 to 720. This should still work with Stable Diffusion 1.5 models, but if you have bigger images, for example, a full HD image, it would be maybe good to reduce the image resolution so that you get better images. Okay, so input image should be set now. We also need to adjust the base parameters to our image resolution. So we have 1280 to 720 here. Let's quickly check the other base parameters. We can switch on the prompt weighting and the normalize prompt weights. The other things can stay like this. Then let's start from the beginning. I put the following prompt schedule in here. So maybe as a description how this works, we have a number at the start. This is standing for the frame. Then we have a double dot, a colon, and then this is followed by quotes. And then we have our prompt, which is then closed by quotes, and then there is a comma. So when you want to animate your prompt, what you simply have to do is start with the frame and then following after the colon your prompt. So I am doing right now, I start with this prompt at frame 0, then the next thing happens at frame 10, the next thing happens at frame 60, and then at 90, and then at 120. Be sure to have the quotes and you have the comma behind every quote, but not at the last quote. If you miss a comma in between, Deforum will throw an error at you and will tell you that there's something wrong. If you start from scratch, let's do it quickly. I take the frame number, the colon, the quote, then I write something like a man underwater, and then I have my closing quotes, and then I have the comma, and then I do this next thing at frame 20, for example, make a colon, then start with the next quote, and then I change it to a fish underwater, make the closing quotes, and then the next comma, start with the next frame, 30, colon, quote, a bike underwater, quotes, closing quotes, and when I stop here, I don't need the ending comma for this scheduling. So this is all you need. What can be handy is that you match the first quote with the image you want Deforum to start with. So we have a man and his mouth is slightly open. So I would put in here a man with a slightly open mouth underwater. So this will give us a more matching animation for the beginning. So the transition between the starting image and our Deforum animation is a little bit smoother depending on what you start with. So if you start with a rabbit or if you start with something else, just maybe try to put it in here and then from there on animate your prompts depending on where you want to go with your Deforum animation. That's the prompt scheduling. In this example, I use the cadence parameters, but we don't need this. This is only for the interpolation between the frames. If you have a basic workflow without the cadence parameters and interpolation, don't worry, it's also working without it. So, but I need to set it here right now. I put it to 2. I keep the optical float cadence raft, put this to 0 and this to 0. Let's keep the flow factor schedule at 1 and put the raft in the optical flow redo generation as well. Keep redo flow factor schedule at 1 also, and the diffusion redo we keep at 0 for now. Okay. Then, quite important, the diffusion parameters. Keep your noise schedule like this. There are floating around some special noise schedule formulas. I tried them and I have to say I am quite happy with a simple standard value which doesn't change. More important, there is the strength schedule. This is quite important because this is telling Deforum how much change should be. If you set this to 65, it's quite aggressive and it will change quite much between every frame generation. If you want to smooth the transition from your starting image to the animation, you can try to set it to 0, for example. So we have our frame, we have the colon, but now we have some brackets and then the value inside the brackets. If you want to animate this, you just can put your first setting here, then we can say at frame 10, I want some more strength schedule. Let's say we want 0.25 at frame 10. Then we need the comma again, and we forgot the colon. And then, for example, at frame 20, we want to do 0.45 as a strength value. And this stays. If you don't write more values behind this, this stays till the end. For this model, I really like to keep it a little bit down. So 0.45 gives me the smoothest effect. The bigger the value is, the more changing your animation will be. If this is too small, you get some feedback loops and your Deforum animation will tend to something strange, to strange colors, or the prompt isn't really showing. It's really a dynamic process and you have to play around with this. Usually a value between 0.45 and 0.65 is a good bet. And if you, for example, at frame 90, you think, oh, there is not enough happening, you can go in here and put the frame 90 in here, make your colon, and then set the schedule strength a little bit higher. So, for example, like 6.5 for this point. And then there is lots of change happening at this frame. And if everything changed, you can go back to the normal 0.45 value, for example, maybe at frame 120, colon, brackets, and then put it back to 0.45, for example. And that's how you animate the strength schedule. It might be handy to adjust this to your prompt and to the model. I realized some models don't work at all and some models work quite well. It's a little bit strange, and Deforum is really something else. It's more like doing alchemy or something. Don't worry if it is not working at the beginning. You really have to get used to the different workflow. Go to the comments and ask questions, and we will find a way to handle all of this. Let's dive into the other settings. I keep this contrast schedule to 1, CFG scale to 7. All of the other values keep as well. Then, really important, the next parameter node are the animation parameters. We put the max frames to 300. We use the animation mode 3D, and we want the border to wrap. Okay, then the real animation magic is happening in the translate parameters. So all of the nodes I'm going through are similar to the tabs you have in Automatic 1111. Almost all of the values you can find in the Deforum nodes as well. Parameters are quite complex. It's quite hard to find the right setting here. I will put my settings in the description below so you can copy them and put it into your workflow. It's a mix of translate X, translate Y, and then rotation, and you really have to try your own values there, or simply keep mine. The way this works is the same as before. I will change the translation to this. So at frame 0, we start with value 0, then frame 30, we take 15. At 210, we take also 15, and then at frame 300, we go back to 0. So this gets animated like we used it in the other scheduled settings. So nothing new here. Play around with those values. The translate Y keeps empty, but the translation Z will look like this. As said, everything will be in the description below. The rotation X settings, rotation Y, and rotation 3D Z. The translate parameters are set. The transform value I put to 0 because I didn't have played with it so far. Only change those values. I have an error here from the last execution of the workflow because they changed this node. This node has the wrong values in it. So what I do here is I load the node again, Deforum base parameters. This has already the right default values in here. You simply load the node again, and then we put our values in there, the resolution from our image. We keep the seed schedule. We need to change the seed behavior to random. We keep the normal sampler name, the Euler scheduler. We take karas and we activate prompt weighting and normalize prompt weights. Let's connect this, and then we can delete the old node. Depending on the workflow you use, you maybe not need to do this. These are the settings. Maybe for the iterator node, I use stable diffusion setting here. Depending on the model you use, you might have to adjust this to SD3 or something else, stable cascade, for example. The seed we randomize. This is quite important because Deforum needs a lot of randomness to keep good animation. I don't like to use the subseed, so this keeps at 0, 0, 0. That should be it. I would say let's simply give it a try. I put the results to the save video node, and here we can see the cadence interpolation results. If you don't use the interpolation nodes, simply go directly to the save video node to see what gets generated. So let's simply start the workflow and see what happens. So we see our starting frame, and then it changes slightly depending on the settings we put in the strings. I would say the strength setting is quite too low at the beginning, and now you see the deforum and the stable diffusion is coming in, but we need to adjust those settings for the beginning because they are too low. Let's have a look how this looks in the video node. So it's happening, but it's not so nice. So let's adjust the strength schedule values at the diffusion parameter node. I will start at 0 with the value 0.45, and for the rest I simply delete everything, because I think most of the time the strength schedule of 0.45 is working quite well. If you want a smoother transition from the start frame to your animation, you can try what we used before and adjust the frames and the settings, and then let's push our reset counter and the reset latent again, and let's do another generation. The stable diffusion comes in quite fast. You see the dreaming is coming in more fast now. This looks quite surrealistic. You really have to do lots of runs. Strange things happen and strange things get generated. Our prompt is quite strange. You see the bicycle is starting to appear in the background. I put a nice prompt schedule in the description below. Let's quickly go back to the schedule I started with and try this one. This is actually a man underwater with slightly open mouth. Colorful neon jellyfish swimming around. A man underwater with closed mouth. So in the first 10 frames we close the mouth. A man with diving suit without goggles underwater. Aquaman with underwater in aquarium. A man underwater in front of a coral reef, and so on. Let's give this a try again. Reset everything and queue everything again. So I will speed things up here and show you the final video. Okay, so let's have a look. Player is playing it a little bit strange, but I think you get the effect. Set the video output settings. If you generate 300 frames, I would put 300 here. The video gets dumped every 300 frames. You can put your codec in here. The frames per second I put to 24. You can also use 15 or 12, and then the video will be saved in your output folder. It will also saved in your output folder if you reset the counter and reset latent. Then this should be automatically dumped into your output folder, even if you don't have reached 300 frames. And that should be it. It's a quite hard ride to find the right Deforum settings, I have to admit. I think this workflow can give you a good start. I am not totally happy with the prompt. Play around with all the values, play around with animation, play around with different models. The next thing I would do with this video is now go back to my video editor. Not many know this, but Blender has a quite simple but usable video editor. You can go to your Blender or your video tool, Premiere or something else, DaVinci Resolve, load your original video and then load in this video and position it at the frame we used as the start frame, and then you should get the result. One thing I didn't capture in this video is the upscaling mechanism. I might do this in the next videos. This should give you a good starting point for this single frame Deforum animation, and I hope everything was understandable and clear. Put your questions in the description below. See you in the next video. Thank you and goodbye.